Everything the last few months has been building up to this specific week. We are crossing some major thresholds this week. We are seeing the other side of a lot of different things. The clarity is continuing. The big aha moments, the big wake the F up moments are continuing. The intensity is continuing as we are rolling or strolling right along onto our next eclipse. It's a partial one this time. Our next eclipse portal, as we are also still releasing a lot of things, figuring out a lot of confusion and trying to sort through the murkiness and the conflicting feelings in our lives. And it's a lot. By the way, thank you guys so much for supporting my last weekly horoscope, which was basically my first weekly horoscope. And forever, I used to do weekly videos in all sorts of ways years ago, but I am back to doing them now because there's just so much going on. It meant a lot to me. It meant a lot to me that you guys supported the hell out of that video. I really appreciate it. Please continue to do the same with this one if you get something from this. And yeah, let's go ahead and get into it because this week is crazy. I'm going to go over kind of the major days or the major events that I think are going to be happening this week, but do keep in mind, just because I talk about certain things on a specific day doesn't mean that we'll only experience those things on that specific day, right? I think that a lot of the things I'm going to go over about this week and maybe tie to certain events on certain days can be felt throughout the whole week, potentially all at once. I mean, it's a mess right now, you guys. The astrology is cray, okay? One big event after another, but things do cool off and we do start going forward like full speed ahead by the second half of April. So we're almost out of the woods, but not quite there yet. So, but just know that clarity is coming. A lot of things are going to continue to start piecing themselves together. If you're still feeling a little lost, confused, stuck, etc., I have things in my life that I'm still kind of confused about and getting, subtle clues on and hints here and there, but we're going to get through it. We are going to get through it. Okay, so let's go ahead and bring up the chart and see what the hell is going on in this bad mama jamma, okay, because it's a lot. Okay, so starting with today, which is Monday, okay? So by the time you guys are seeing this, Monday's already over. So I will take that as a clue for next time to basically start going over next week's Monday in these if there are big events happening, but I didn't think about it last week, so excuse that. But today, Monday is a big deal, okay? Why? Because we have this massive Mercury Cazimi happening in Aries, this explosive sign with Mercury being in the heart of the sun, in this sign that is really about believing in thyself, like doing what you want to do, the fire, the change that sparks everything. So we have been reflecting with all these different retrogrades, Venus retrograde, Mercury retrograde, on what we really want, what's good for us. But these have come with some confrontations, some conflicts, some tense feelings. This is a very edgy energy. All this Aries energy has really led us into this kind of tense, edgy, confrontational place where we've had to kind of confront uncomfortable situations with other people that are very tense and potentially, even argumentative or in some way confrontational or controversial. We've had to really deal with a lot of tense stuff, right? Aries is a fire sign. It is the first fire sign of the zodiac. It is the self-starter. It is like, I'm going to do me and deal with the consequences of that later, right? And a lot of the times when we are just doing our thing and we are, more concerned with what we're doing and what's going on with us, we're not really thinking too much about what everybody's going to think about it and what potential reactions we're going to get to our actions, right? So Aries is basically, every action has a reaction kind of thing, but Aries is the action part, right? It's not really thinking about the reaction. It's more thinking about, let's just go. Let's bring in some kind of change. Let's make moves. Let's take action. Who cares about the rest? We'll figure it out from there. But when we do that, we sometimes get some backlash, right? We sometimes get some feedback that can feel tense, we can piss people off, or people can think that we're just out for ourselves or we're just selfish and we don't care about other people. What I really think we're starting with, and what I really want to get into and kind of pick apart with this Mercury Cazimi happening on Monday, is the world is tense right now, right? I think that people are on edge. It feels like what we want may be in the past, but the past is dead. Or it feels like the future is just so blank and unknown and uncertain and potentially, a little bit eerie to think about that we're not really sure how to move forward in this time. And so this Aries energy is like fight or flight energy. And so we've had to confront some uncomfortable, fiery situations in our lives that have felt really edgy. Like I said, right? And so there may be another option though. It's not always just fight or flight, right? There may be another option. And I think with all the retrogrades that are going to go back into Pisces, which we'll talk about in a little bit, we will see or potentially have a change of heart from some things that we are experiencing right now. These transits in Aries have been uncomfortable, confronting, masks have been ripped off. We have had to kind of stop wearing rose-colored glasses towards things and have to kind of confront things as we go. And I think that, with the Venus retrograde in Aries and now Mercury retrograde in Aries, we've been really shown a lot of the things that we don't want. We've been shown a lot of the chaotic things in our lives that potentially have made us uncomfortable because they're not peaceful, they're not comfortable, right? Like Venus is in her fall in the sign of Aries. And so these are not comfortable situations that we're having to deal with. They're tense, they're edgy, they're confronting, right? And so we're kind of going through a lot of realizations, disillusionment, and potentially even shifting our mind or changing our minds on things that we once thought that we wanted or that we once, a direction that we were headed in at some point, right? But these things that we are addressing or changing our minds on can be controversial or cause conflict in some way, because they may affect other people or whatever. And so we've really had to learn how to look out for ourselves, even if that makes us look like we are, somewhat selfish, right? But we have to find the balance in doing that. And so I think that we're starting to get the answers that we need this week, but not the answers that we want necessarily, or that we wanted or expected necessarily. And I think that sometimes knowing our individual truths creates conflict. Like I said, it creates friction. Aries is about friction. That's how you start a fire, right? Some things need to get heated up for you to start moving and taking action, right? That's how the spark is started. And sometimes that spark is created through the conflict in our lives. And so if you're feeling like things are chaotic, or you've been dealing with a lot of conflict, or there's been a lot of edginess from you or other people, or frustration or confusion, it's okay, because that's what this time is about. Sometimes that spark is created by knowing what we don't want as much as it is from knowing what we do want, right? I've said this so much lately because it's so true, but one of my favorite quotes is that when you avoid conflict externally, you create it internally. And that is what this time is about. Where have we potentially been avoiding causing conflict externally to where we've kind of just been exploding lately because we can no longer handle the conflict that the avoidance is creating internally, right? We can no longer handle the internal back and forth. And for some of you, it could be opposite. I think that we are really dealing with conflict, or learning to deal with conflict that is arising from things that we've needed to face or confront that can feel very intense, or that can feel very frustrating, but that it's very much needed, right? It might piss some other people off, right? It might piss us off, right? If it's done to us, like this can be you or the people around you or the people or whatever. But either way, it's definitely, there's some flames that are happening very, very much this week and for the last several weeks, But we're really learning how to deal with the hard things, right? We're really learning how to kind of be able to change our mind, even if it's hard. And, that can be difficult. But I think that once we are able to do that, we are able to feel some kind of relief in that. The intensity may lift once we address certain situations. Okay. I think as long as we are honest and at least try to be somewhat reasonable with how we're feeling, right? Or somewhat, respectful about it, then I think that that's the way forward. So these are tense times, offering major insights, but more than anything, it's about listening to our own truth, even if it's confrontational, even if it's going to disrupt our surroundings or anger other people or be uncomfortable for other people. And I think that's this polarity that we're playing with is do I do what's good for me, or do I address this, conflict I have going on within me, or do I keep dealing with it to not create conflict outside of me in some way, So I think with this Mercury cazimi, Mercury literally being in the heart of the sun, is kind of us getting on board with what we know we're starting to know that we need to do. For some people, this could be an announcement, that you're making, or a conversation that you're having in some way, or some kind of news that either comes to you or that you're giving, right? That again could cause some friction in some way, shape, or form, or cause some kind of ripple effect in some way, shape, or form. For others, it could be an inner knowing or an inner revelation that happens that is a little bit controversial in some way. It's like, oh, okay, if I make this change, or if I choose this and make this decision in some way, then I am going to be ruffling some feathers, right? I think with the Venus Cazimi that we just had a couple days ago over the weekend on Saturday, I think the Venus Cazimi was us kind of realigning with what we want, or starting to really be clear on what we don't want, right? Sometimes we start understanding what we want by understanding what we don't want, right? And so I think that the Venus Cazimi is like us realigning with what we want, or at least recognizing it by what we don't want, and realigning with our hearts in some way. And the Mercury Cazimi is us realigning with our minds, right? And so in some way, in our choices and our thoughts. And so I think, and then the solar eclipse at the very end of this week, that is also happening in Aries, the partial solar eclipse at the very end of this week, is like the full-on alignment. Like, we are for sure going to understand, I think, and know what needs to change, or how we need to move forward. Our emotions and our vitality, our will, are going to be on board with the sun and the moon meeting in the sky in the sign of Aries, and pretty much being a partial solar eclipse. And so I think that Monday we are getting even more clues, even more clarity before Mercury and Venus retrograde back into Pisces later this week, to kind of close things out, so we can, let go or release whatever old stuff we still need to release. But once they move back into Pisces, this could also even be a change of heart that begins to happen, because this will be a vibe shift. This will be a whole different game that we enter when they move back into Pisces. And something really interesting I'm also noticing about all of this astrology, is that there's so many things switching places, right? So the sun and Venus are basically switching places. The sun's just come out of Pisces and into Aries in its exaltation, and then Venus is about to go back into Pisces for her exaltation. And then we also have Venus and Mercury switching places with Neptune at the very end of this week as well. And all these planets are switching places basically from Pisces to Aries, and so because of that, the next thing that I really want to talk about is Thursday, where Venus will move into Pisces and basically conjunct Neptune right as she moves into Pisces. And so this is huge. She's finally retrograding back into Pisces from Aries, where she has been, and it's been a frustrating experience, because instead of having peace and pleasure and beauty in the way that she likes to enjoy it, she's had to deal with a lot of issues or setbacks or conflicts in order to feel that sense of peace, pleasure, and beauty that she likes to experience, And so with Venus then moving back from Aries to Pisces, I think that this is so much about, and a lot of these planets just kind of switching places between these two signs, is so much about this kind of balance between compassion and hatred that I've been noticing lately. And I've been hearing the term a lot recently, rage bait, right? I've been noticing a lot about rage bait and anger, and this kind of polarity between compassion and hatred, which is very much this Aries and Pisces energy, right? And so I've been seeing just a lot of, people get emotionally triggered and go into this experience of aggression and hatred and rage almost, right? And even last week I had this experience where, I had started to really change up my morning routine and focus more on my spirituality and my energy, and keeping my mood and my mind right, and really watching where I put my focus, and I decided one day to switch it up and look into what was happening in the world, and got super, super angry. It was like, and I'm not an angry person, okay? It takes a lot for me to get angry. I'm not just like, little something happens and I'm spazzing out, okay? If you see me angry, I'm for real freaking angry. And it doesn't last long. I can't even hold anger for a long time either without starting to cry at some point, So I'm not an angry person. I don't like anger. It's a huge turnoff for me. It's I'm just not an angry person at all, right? And so Anyway, last week though, I started like looking into some things, catching up on what was going on in the world. And just for some reason, my algorithm was flooded with just the most rage baiting kind of stuff. And I was like, and I just started feeling this feeling take over me of like, I didn't really know what it was at first. It was just like, oh my gosh. And I literally, it was like this just rage started taking over me and just this hatred. And I just started thinking really negative thoughts about people. And that's not like me at all. Not like me at all. Like I'm always playing devil's advocate. I'm always trying to see both sides of a situation, you know. I'm always trying to look at things from a higher perspective. And I was just like, oh my gosh. Like I just saw so many people just justifying really horrific stuff. And I was just like, wow, like this is so sad that we've gotten to a place. I felt overwhelmed with not only sadness, but anger. Sadness that we literally have so much division and so much conflict in the world. And also anger that we do, you know, and anger at people that, you know, use that and push that and, you know, are, you know, creating violence and all kinds of other things, you know, and I was just so, it like ruined my day. I was like such in a bad mood for the rest of the day. I couldn't even speak to anybody because I was just so frustrated. And eventually, I took a bath. I took a bath and very Piscean water, right, to cool down. And in the bath, I did like a little bit of a meditation and went into like a little bit of a trance state. Met with some guy in a vision who, you know, looked like some kind of chief or something, and talked to him for a little bit. And he gave me some, you know, just great advice and helped kind of calm me down and take the anger from me. And I realized that all of that anger wasn't even my own, right? It's almost like contagious, right? There's this contagious hatred and rage that is going around in the collective right now. And that's why I was, you know, seeing that stuff and it just felt like I felt something come over me. And after that, it was like, what just happened, you know? Like, and because like I said, I'm normally not an angry person, and it just felt like it took over me and was controlling me. And that's kind of what happens with anger anyway, you know. That's kind of like, it's hard to see straight, to control yourself, to not want to like punch a wall or scream or whatever when we're angry, right? And so it's like there's this collective rage happening right now, right? And I think a lot of rage bait happening right now. And the way that I've been seeing it personally is this: there's so much compassion that eventually when people aren't, I guess, as compassionate as other people, or not everybody feels the same way about what to be compassionate about, then it turns to anger, and then it turns to choosing a side, right? And then it turns to, you don't understand me and I don't understand you, and so you must be XYZ if you don't agree with me, right? And it just turns into all this hatred and rage and anger, and you know, rooting for a side and feeling justified to root for a side and justified to do whatever you want to the other side, just because you've now like kind of started this whole game of this is right and this is wrong, but then those lines get crossed as you start doing wrong things to prove that you're right, right? And so it's like this whole confusion of what's right and wrong starts happening in that space. And I always say, a quote that kind of came to me one time was, make sure that in your fight against something, that you don't become the very thing that you're fighting against. Because I see it happen so much. I don't know if it's my Libra sun or what, but hypocrisy is something I spot very, very easily. And even within myself, you know? So anyway, I feel like there's this living in split realities right now where we can get very overwhelmed and frustrated and angry by so many things. It may not even just be what's happening in the world. It could even just be with your partner, with your family, with your work, with your boss, like whatever. There's just this frustration, this tension that seems to be building, right? And I think that a lot of this, as Venus, you know, on Thursday retrogrades back from Aries and into Pisces, there's going to be this cooling off point and this return to compassion, right? Like compassion isn't just about having compassion when you feel like it, or having compassion for some people and not other people, or having compassion for others and not yourself, or having compassion for yourself and not others, right? It's literally compassion, right? For people, for humanity, because in some way, some shape or form, from a higher perspective, right? It's all connected, right? And I'm not saying that to like spiritually bias or whatever. There are difficult, hard things that we got to fucking deal with. on earth, in this earth school that we are in, right? But also, it's also not healthy to be engaging in rage all the time over what people are doing or not doing, or being angry, and not looking at yourself and asking yourself, Aries, where this anger is coming from, and why can't you use this fiery energy for something more healthy, for something better, instead of to try to take it out on other people all the time, right? Because you think you're so right and they're so wrong, yet you're the one, expressing your anger and projecting it on everybody else, right? So I think that within this Aries dynamic, like I said, this balance, or this polarity of like hate and compassion, clinging, like I talked about last week with Pisces energy, clinging to the suffering and looking at the world through that lens and seeing the hell and the fear and the hatred that's part of Pisces energy. Like looking at the world through this victim lens. It's not only about believing that you're a victim all the time, but also seeing it through that lens, seeing the world through that lens, that all these people are a victim and all these people are suffering. And that eventually, when you don't know what to do with that, or you are looking at the world through that way, eventually you start feeling angry, right? And that has to turn into action, And so I think that that's a frequency. We can either live in the frequency of this place is hell, this place is horrible, this place has so much fear and hatred and suffering, right? Or we can live in a different frequency, but we can choose, right? We forget that we are playing our own game, that we are in control of our perception of reality, right? And that's what so much of this comes back to right now, is perception of reality. Pisces mythologically is the mother of monsters. Why? Because Pisces is the ocean. There's like monsters down there, like there's beautiful creatures, and then there's also not so beautiful creatures that will bite your head off, or that would be probably scary to even look at, And so I think that it can either be this hell that traps us in this endless suffering, just like the ocean can drown us, or, and we're trapped underwater, or, we allow the heaviness to disintegrate, because when you fight, you end up drowning the more you fight, right? You're only hurting yourself by fighting, right? You're not hurting anybody else, unless you're like actually physically fighting, obviously, but the more that you fight things in your life, or the more anger that you have towards other people, again, that resentment is only really hurting you. Okay. And when we allow that heaviness to disintegrate and we let that go, we float, right? The more you fight, the more you sink in Pisces energy in the ocean, right? The more you let go, the more you float, and the ocean will carry you where you need to go. Okay. So I think this is also why, like, psychics and people that have had, near-death experiences, I being one of them, there's always a pattern with people that talk about near-death experiences. I've listened to so many near-death experiences. It's like a little fascination I have because I've been through it. And I've heard so many psychics say the same thing about this like almost prison for souls, that when a soul dies, how it can get stuck in the afterlife, and how, you always hear people say to tell the soul to go to the light. The soul needs to go to the light, right? But some souls don't go to the light, and they end up kind of stuck in this in-between gray area, but usually not because they, are being purposely held there by something else, but because it's by choice, right? It's by choice. Why? Because they feel they don't deserve the light. Because they are holding on to some kind of shame, guilt, anger, resentment from their human life, that they feel unworthy of the light. And so they stay in that area. And I've heard so many people talk about this or experience this during a near-death experience, or psychics talk about this. And there's just this pattern. If you really listen to so many different ones, there's this pattern there's tons of patterns that they all talk about that start emerging. But this kind of go to the light pattern seems to really be there. And I think this is that Pisces in between mutable water energy of like, do you want to keep suffering when you don't have to, or do you want to go to the light? It's like, I kind of sat in my anger the other day, just fuming and getting mad at any little thing and frustrated at every little thing, until I was like, why am I holding all of this. This isn't even like mine, you know? Like, and I took a bath and I decided to go inward and let go and not keep clinging to this, you know? Because I do believe that at some point, because I get very involved in things that are going on in the world or in the country or whatever at times. And I do believe at some points that becomes unhealthy, especially when at this moment, if you physically have no control over it, you know, and continuing to watch it, it almost just continues to feed the powerlessness, you know. And I think that, again, that's a frequency. We can focus on all the things that are wrong and bad and that we're powerless over and that we're drowning in, and all of the anger and all of that, or we can choose to actually just tell the truth and say, actually, there's really not much I can do about this, but I can change the way that I'm responding to it. I can change the way that I'm viewing it. I can change my perception. I can surrender what I can't control, and I can trust in a higher plan, or that there's a higher purpose playing out, and I can work on myself and work on my anger and my triggers, and so I can live a more peaceful life because I deserve that. Right? And I can pray for the others that I feel compassion for, or that I worry about, or whatever. And if I have it, I can donate, or I can do XYZ, or like whatever the case may be, you know? Okay, editing me here. I wanted to edit in one more idea I have to kind of give you the full spectrum on this, because as I was editing this, I thought of one more thing, because it literally just happened to me yesterday. It's like when you're watching a movie, right? And you know the bigger plot that's happening, but like the main character doesn't know yet you keep getting like frustrated with the main character's like decisions and actions, because it's like, oh my God, no, don't do that. No, wait, you don't know the whole story yet, right? It's like, that's what's happening with us on a daily basis, but we are the main character. You know what I mean? We can get so mad or so upset and give in to like all this like rage bait stuff and give in to all this anger and all of that, yet we don't know the bigger picture, right? Like, we don't know how it's all connected on a higher level, or what's going on, or the bigger plot. You know what I mean? And that's what we really tap into when we tap back into our intuition, tap back into our higher power, a spiritual perspective, etc. So I just wanted to add that as well. But the key to this is forgiveness, right? Venus retrograding back in Pisces, conjuncting Neptune, forgiveness. I really think this is forgiveness for something. This is a potentially, I think for a lot of people, a lot of disillusionment in love, remembering what we desire and what we actually dream of or envision for ourselves in our lives, as, you know, she retrogrades back into Pisces and immediately conjuncts Neptune. Also addressing potential themes of escapism, delusion, you know, trust, love, compassion, devotion, the higher perspective on relationship situations or situations involving our desires, our dreams, and what we truly want out of life. And really seeing the beauty of surrender, right? For some, this could be an old dream or an old fantasy kind of fading, and us needing to trust our feelings and our intuition, to trust the yearning that we have for something deeper, spiritual, and more aligned in our lives, and to trust the yearning that we have for more fulfillment. I think that really addressing where we are not feeling completely fulfilled, or where we haven't been doing things that fulfill us, could be really big with this transit that's starting Thursday, okay? So I also think that here, you know, because Saturn's only a few degrees away, the node's only a couple degrees away. So with Saturn and the node very nearby Venus and Neptune, I do think that this could also be showing us things that we need to let go of, or where we have kind of been in some kind of self-deception, where we need to kind of tie up loose ends, you know, face certain disappointments, and like stop allowing them to kind of be weights that are holding us back. You know, where we are facing some kind of hard universal truth about something that we need to face in order to move forward, or that we need to kind of heal or integrate in order to move forward in some way. So I really think that that is what Thursday and into the rest of the week is going to be about. So let's go ahead and talk about Friday. Friday is a really interesting day. And mainly because the moon in Pisces is going to be, moving across so many of these planets in Pisces. And so, it's going to be moving across Saturn, Saturn, the node, Venus, and Neptune on Friday. And this is the day before the partial Aries solar eclipse on Saturday. So this is like the build up to that eclipse energy. And the moon's going to be crossing all these big players right now in Pisces and really emotionally aligning us with each lesson, like locking in each lesson as it goes through each planet, which I think is just really interesting. So first, the moon is like going to cross Saturn. And with the moon crossing Saturn, I think that that's definitely going to be us like potentially breeding potential for some serious introspection on Friday, especially in like the morning kind of, first part of the day. I think there could be some serious introspection going on as we are wanting to handle things with maturity, integrity, and, I also think that this could be potentially us facing or addressing something around loneliness or vulnerability or even feeling misunderstood. And then after that, the moon will then cross the north node, Venus and Neptune, again putting this major focus on this Venus and Neptune node situation that we have going on here. So we may know deep down, I think with this, a truth that could be potentially a little bit hard or difficult to face or reveal for one reason or another, especially with it starting, whoops, what happened there? Okay, so we may be dealing with a little bit of a difficult truth, Friday, like, or some kind of vulnerability that comes up. It's like deep down, there's something that we need to face that's going on, I think, that we need to deal with. We need to deal with it with maturity and integrity in some way, shape, or form. But I do think that emotionally, we're going to be really understanding more about the plot here that's going on with this whole, couple week long, or not couple week, but a few month long story that we've been in with these retrogrades and all of this Pisces energy. And so it's like deep down, we may know something that could be somewhat hard to face for some of us. I also think that this could be potentially just even a vulnerable releasing of something that, maybe we're emotionally connecting with someone else and needing to be vulnerable. I think that, Venus and Neptune want us to kind of merge and come together and unify with our feelings and trust in the divine and trust in our hearts and souls. And so I think, it's like showing ourselves grace and showing others grace as well. I think our emotional fulfillment at this time really comes from trusting our inner knowing. And this is kind of prepping us for Saturday, where we have that Aries solar eclipse. Okay, so then on Saturday, we eventually have the Aries solar eclipse. The moon will be conjunct the sun in Aries, and Mercury will be going retrograde back into Pisces as well. And so we'll be having the solar eclipse in Aries, Mercury retrograding back into Pisces now too. And this is really, really interesting. And so this is where this like massive flip happens that I kind of mentioned in the beginning, right? We have now the sun in Aries and Mercury and Venus in Pisces. And Neptune's about to move into Aries the very next day on Sunday. And there's this massive shift happening. There's this massive like threshold that's almost flipping or changing places, right? And so it's like we're almost seeing the other side of something in some way, either the other side of some area of our life or the other side of some era in our life, right? And in a way, this does trace back to the last like year and a half that we were having the node move through Aries, and now it's in Pisces. And we also are having this last solar eclipse in Aries, even though it's a partial solar eclipse. There's this like weird changing place thing that's happening with a lot of these transits. And so it's like we could find ourselves on the other side of something that may have started a year and a half ago, or potentially even longer for some people. Either way, it's like there's something here where there is a vibe shift happening now with basically all the planets back into Pisces and the moon and the sun now in Aries. There's a fresh new beginning starting here with no more planets in here yet other than the moon and the sun. And the rest of the planets are back in Pisces. Mercury and Venus are retrograde, finishing or closing out something in the Pisces area of life, or to do with the Pisces themes of life, as we start something fresh and new in this Aries energy, the cardinal fire sign of the zodiac. This is something really new. This is something brand freaking new, right? This is a new change, a new potential, but also it's ending out some kind of old chapter with it being the last solar eclipse in this sign. So this final eclipse portal that we're kind of walking into on Saturday is this like ripple effect that really takes us into this portal for the next several months. But more specifically, the next 2 weeks, because in that next 2 weeks, we're going to see Venus and Mercury start to go forward again and end their retrograde. And we are going to start seeing a lot of shifts happen and a lot of forward momentum happen after these next 2 weeks or so. So I think that, we've had a lot of seeds planted in Aries over the last couple months and over the last year and a half as well. And I think this is some kind of massive flash, some kind of massive end and beginning. It's going to be quick, but it's also going to build because the solar eclipse builds. So we may not know completely what is starting by Saturday. We've gotten plenty of clues, but we may not know completely, but there is some kind of alignment or fresh energy. For some, it could just be I feel totally different for some reason, or something feels totally different, but you may not be able to place your finger on it, right? It could feel like a powerful energy, but it's you're still working out tying up some loose ends, letting go of some things, sorting through some things that you're still confused about that you need to get realigned with before you can move full speed ahead. So even after this Aries solar eclipse, it's not full speed ahead yet. It's full speed ahead when Mercury and Venus start to move forward, especially as they go back into Aries later in April. Okay, so anyway, so this is really huge because also, like I said, the very next day on Sunday, Neptune then moves into the sign of Aries for the first time. And this is huge, right? This is so huge because then and again, Mercury and Neptune are then switching places. Mercury will retrograde back into Pisces on Saturday, conjunct Neptune, giving us a whole idea for a vision and some kind of long-term closure, I think, in some weird way of a Piscean journey that we've been going through, right? Because you have to think, as Mercury retrogrades back, goes into Pisces, conjuncts Neptune at 29 degrees Pisces, this very last degree of Pisces, where Neptune has been moving through this sign for the last over a decade, since I think 2013, 2014, I want to say. It's now at the final degree of this journey. It's at the final step of this journey. And Mercury then goes into Pisces, conjuncts it, the mind, Mercury, conjuncts Neptune, our beliefs, our vision, our higher vision for life and where we feel spiritually connected, gives us some huge vision, huge insight, huge intuitive, idea or closure on something. There's something that's coming together and closing out here at the same time. And then the very next day on Sunday, Neptune finally moves forward in the sign of Aries and leaves Pisces for the first time since, it's been in Pisces for all this time, but it hasn't been in Aries since the 1800s. So it's moving in Aries for the first time since the 1800s. Okay. So it's this is a huge, huge deal. And one of the biggest things, I think, I did a whole video talking about my predictions for this year, so I'm not going to go super in depth into Neptune and Aries, but one of the biggest things that I think this Neptune and Aries transit is going to be about, and one of the biggest things I think this time is going to be about, is I think this is the start of a new vision and world that we're entering to. It's a vibe shift that the world's going to feel, right? And we're entering into, it's almost the way I see this is we're all at a party, right? We're all at a party, wedding, party, whatever you want to call it. And the theme of that party has been mystical, magical, shamanic, healing and psychedelic, and all of that, right? This party that Neptune's now moving into, the Neptune and Aries party, is going to be very different, okay? This is going to be warrior, caveman, wild animal kind of energy, right? So this is going to kind of start this whole new theme for the world, this whole new culture shift, this whole new just kind of background theme for the world that we're living in. And it's going to deal a lot with conviction and determination and standing up for yourself and bravery and individuality and standing up for what one believes in, right? Standing up for the self, the individual, and even if it causes confrontation, right? I think that also with this Neptune and Aries transit, it's going to be majorly about self-belief, because self-belief, if you really think about this, is at the root of everything. Okay, self-belief is at the root of everything. If you don't believe in yourself, you're not going to push yourself. You're going to give up as soon as it gets hard. You're going to back out or turn around as soon as it gets tough, or you hit a roadblock or a speed bump. If you don't believe in yourself, you're going to pull yourself out, right? Like just like, for instance, if you're not a doctor, why are you not a doctor? Because you didn't believe that you could be a doctor, right? You didn't feel called to it, and so you didn't believe you could. And maybe you do feel called to other things, but you're not that. Why not? Because you don't believe in yourself, right? So it all comes back to just self-belief. I've seen and also made incredible, miraculous things happen in my life, but it always came back down to believing in myself. When I believed in myself, regardless of anyone else did or not, I've had times where no one else believed in me, and I've had times where a lot of other people believed in me too. And I've also had times where other people believed in me, but I didn't believe in myself. And it still didn't matter because I didn't believe in myself. Right? It's like you can have a million people telling you, you are the greatest, look at all your potential. I'm sure you feel that way about certain people in your life. You look at them and you just see all the potential in the world. They could literally do anything they wanted to do, but they don't, because they don't believe in themselves, right? And it's like but they could do it, right? If they did, right? It's the same way for all of us. And if we don't have self-belief, people have made themselves into huge, huge, huge big deals in the world because they claimed that they were a big deal way before they ever had anything physical to prove it to people, way before they could show people completely why they were a big deal, right? It's all about energy, it's all about confidence, and it's all about believing in yourself regardless of what happens, and continuing to believe in yourself over and over and over, and come back to that self-belief. And so I truly think that Neptune moving into Aries is going to be about self-belief, believing in ourselves, and kind of expressing that warrior-like energy within us, even when it's hard or even when there's obstacles. And it's going to start showing us our potential and realigning us with a spiritual mission in our lives, or a higher mission, or a mission that feels more purposeful or destined in our lives, with Neptune in Aries. But it is going to come with challenges, and we may even start almost glamorizing those challenges. We may even start wanting to challenge ourselves and see what we can take and see how much we can overcome. It's like challenge is a beautiful thing. The world would be so freaking boring, and this is the beauty of fire as well, and the beauty of friction, and the beauty of conflict. I kind of talked about the shadow side earlier with hatred and resentment, but there is a beautiful side of it too, just like there is with everything. There's light and shadow, but there is a beautiful side of it too. It's why we root for the underdog, and also with Chiron, being in Aries as well. It's why we root for the underdog in the movie, because we love to see the journey that they take through, being this little bitty person that doesn't believe in themselves, and just little old me, oh, I could never do that, to going through hardship. And usually it's really, really hard stuff, unbelievable stuff that it's oh my God, I don't know if I could survive that, and they go through these really hard, horrific things, right? But it forges them in the flames of those hells that they walk through, right? They are then forged into becoming this badass, and you're holy crap, and we get so excited. We're when we finally see them accomplish their mission or beat the bad guy at the end, it's because we've watched what they've went through to get there, and we love that transformation from somebody that didn't believe in themselves at all to somebody that grows in their confidence and just completely believes in themselves regardless of what anybody else thinks. And it's that's the kind of journey that we are going to be going on. We're going to be going on our own heroic hero's journey over the next several years with Neptune and Aries somewhere in our lives that is action-packed and potentially challenging and confrontational and controversial at times. And that's going to also have us questioning ourselves and our faith and what we even believe in, and all of that. But we also have to make sure it's something that truly feels aligned with us, because I think with Neptune and Aries, we're no longer going to be influenced by other people or media or just all of these other things. And obviously there will still be some of that. I'm not saying that's completely going to go away, but I think a lot more people are going to be believing in themselves and trusting more in themselves, at least we're going to be getting a lot of lessons in that. Okay. And so that is what we have on Sunday. Neptune finally moves into Aries, starts this huge new era. I looked into Monday next week. I don't think there's anything going on next Monday that I really want to add in here, talk about in here. So, but let me know down below, you guys, if this video was helpful, if I said anything in this video that you really needed to hear. Anyways, you guys, thank you for watching. If you watched all the way till the end, comment down below, badass alien. I appreciate you guys as always. We are kind of having a lot of changing of the mind, changing of the heart, but we're still not all the way clear. There's still this kind of in-between space that we are in, but we are on the back half of it. Okay, so we are starting to kind of come out of it. Things will begin to get more clear. It is building, and things will begin to start changing as we are building to this eclipse. And then after this eclipse, we have a couple more weeks. Things will slow down after this eclipse. We'll have a couple weeks to kind of sit in everything that's happened before we start really moving forward. And I think that we'll for sure know within the next couple weeks how we want to move forward, what needs to change, what we don't want, what we do want. Venus retrogrades and Mercury retrogrades, like I said last week, really help us introspect and get super clear on what's for us and what's not, what's working and what's not in our lives, and what we like and want and what we don't like and want. And sometimes those truths, although they are coming from within us, can feel very difficult or hard at times, because it's like, ooh, I really thought I wanted this, or I really thought I liked this, or I really was feeling that, but now I'm not. And now that is fading. It's like something is fading in our lives. And there's a lot here about acceptance and surrender, while also allowing the answers to become more and more clear as time moves and as we go into the next couple weeks, while also a massive new vision starting to form, and a large dose of self-belief coming after this week. And so, I will see you guys in the next one. I have a lot of videos coming out this week. We have horoscopes for April, plus the Aries solar eclipse video and this video. So there's going to be a lot of videos this week. So you're going to get kind of bombarded with videos here. So just be prepared. And I will see you guys in the next one.